All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Free. I'm Ryan. I'm the pastor and executive director here, and this is Carrie McMullen. She is the associate executive director here, and it's so good to be with you all tonight, and it's good to be with all of our online people tonight. We're so glad you're part of this community. Welcome from whatever state you're joining us from, whatever living room you're joining us from, or maybe it's a sober living house or treatment center. We're just glad you're with us, glad you're a part of this community. To remind you, this is a community for addicts, loved ones of addicts and spiritual refugees, and what we do here is break the silence of addiction and create space for healing, recovery, and spiritual connection. And there's always one thing we don't do here at Free. You can shout it out on a count of three. 1, 2, 3. We don't do shame. Yeah, we can clap for that even. Carrie's going to tell you some things we do that are coming up. It's all yours, Carrie.
Thanks, friends. Hi, friends. I'm Carrie. I want to let you guys know that if you want to get connected here, we are glad that you are with us. We want to get to know you better. Come see me or another staff member or a volunteer after this service and come get a welcome bag. Inside the welcome bags, you're going to find some fresh roasted Wagon coffee by the wonderful Tammy Canaday and all of her wonderful ladies at Wagon Coffee. It's some of the freshest roasted coffee you will get because it's roasted right here on site. So it's pretty spectacular.
You said last service it was the best coffee in the world.
In the whole world. It is the best coffee in the whole world. That is true. Rigorous honesty. We also, inside the bag, have our Connect cards to get signed up for our newsletter, to stay connected with who our guest storyteller is going to be that week, and any other events that we have going on in the community. It's a great way to just kind of stay informed, feel included, and it gets us a chance to get to know you as well. So please connect with us. I also want to let you know that if you are signed up for our newsletter, you would also see these things in the newsletter. So the next thing is on March 13th. In this building, we are hosting what we're calling our, hopefully, a first annual. Hopefully we continue to do this because the success that we have had so far, we opened it to 55 vendors, and we have had over 80 applicants where we actually had to tell people that they couldn't participate but to still come anyway. But it's all different recovery vendors from every single type of recovery field you can think of. Sober livings, treatment centers, in-person, IOPs, recovery coaching, employment opportunities, you name it, county services, all of the things recovery. So whether you're in recovery and you have a service to provide, or you're looking for services, it's a great way to network. It's a great way to meet friends. And this is literally going to span the entire building. So this room, the hallways, the classrooms, the cafe, the entire building. So I would also encourage you guys to come early and park at Safeway if you need some extra parking. Next, my friends, we have another Grounded Warrior retreat coming up. This is going to be on March 25th. For those of you who know Maggie, she does our yoga here on Monday evenings and Saturday mornings. She has gathered a lot of different practitioners of all different kinds to have a holistic day of healing, yoga, breath work, I think some healthy eating in there, sound bath. It's just a great way to kind of recharge and give back to yourself.
It's going to be like yoga on steroids.
Not even just because you can just relax. You don't even have to do the yoga. You can also just lay there and receive.
No.
And
He's saying it's not at all like yoga on steroids.
oh yeah, it's like the opposite, right? It's going to be.
My bad.
Yeah, that's all right. But it's going to be just a day of self-healing. It's open to all genders, right? So this is not just something for women in recovery. So this is for absolutely everybody. And then to register, you can go to Maggie's Venmo, both on our newsletter and on our website under the events page. You can find the event, click on the link, and it'll take you to Maggie's Venmo, and you just need to Venmo $111 and then write your name and your phone number in the comments. And that is all I have for you.
Okay, thank you, Carrie.
Thanks, guys.
All right, y'all, the way we get started, you can give that mic to Austin. volunteered to be a mic passer. The way we get started here at Free on a Saturday night is with celebrations. We start with the good, we lift up the good. Maybe you are celebrating a sobriety anniversary or a birthday or new jobs, new homes, new babies, whatever the new thing is in your life or recovery, we celebrate it all here. We take 3 minutes for this. A profound time that we get to share together of rooting for each other, celebrating one another, God joining with us in the celebrations. By the way, if you're online, drop your celebrations in the YouTube comments or the Facebook comments. We'll celebrate with you there. Austin will have a mic on this side. Darren will have a mic on this side. All you have to do in-house is raise up your hand and give us the good news. This 3 minutes is yours.
Hello, I'm Leslie. I'm an alcoholic. I just celebrated 14 years this month, and I actually got my 1-year chip in that room over there. So I'm really glad that I coming back, and I'm here with my first friend in AA who was also at my wedding. So it was just like a really full moment.
Full circle moment. Happy 14 years.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations, Leslie.
My name's Derek, and about 5 years ago I came into this place, broken on meth, homeless, prison, in trauma. I was scared of God, and you guys never showed me the door, and because of that, this place was a starting place for me to love God, and now I'm 5 years sober this week, and just a miracle. So thank you for teaching me what the grace of God is about and the love of God.
Way to go, D. Happy 5 years, man. Congratulations, buddy.
Hey, my name is Ray. I'm celebrating my mother's birthday today. We haven't been to church together in over 20 years, man. She's here with me tonight.
All right, what a beautiful moment, man. We'll celebrate that, Ray.
Hey y'all, I'm John, and today is day 30, free of drugs and alcohol.
All right, John. Good to see you, man. Happy 30.
What's up, guys? My name is Nick. I just got into IOP, and I'm like maybe 1 day away from my 90 days.
All right, Nick. Way to go, dude.
Thanks, guys.
Happy 89. Glad you're here, buddy.
Hey, my name's Ron. I got 44 days today. I just did some serious prison time, got out, went to IOP, and I'm starting college on the 17th.
All right, Ron. Way to go, dude. Congratulations, man. Other celebrations in the house. One right in the middle here, Darren.
I don't know if my husband announced this last week, but I wasn't here, and we celebrated my daughter Ava's 2nd birthday.
Happy
last weekend.
birthday, Ava. 2 years old. Beautiful. He did not celebrate that last week. You'll have to let him know that. Way to go, Chance. Anyone else? Actually, 3.
I'll go real quick.
Yes, Austin, take us out.
Austin. I have a little over a year, and I officially have started my own LLC. So, very grateful.
Way to go, man. Proud of you, dude. The beautiful things that happen in this community. It's on.
I want to say something else beautiful that has happened in this community this week. So a quick background. I spent a good part of 15 years traveling around 4 states teaching people about the third place. You guys might have heard this from Coffee Corporation. And it was really important for me to teach that lesson of a third place. Not first place, that's home. The second place is work, and the third place, it's the coffee place. This week I received a note from my friend Colin in the second row, and it stopped me, and it just was so profound because he wrote a letter and said,
You had her in tears, man.
I told him he did already. He said he had a conversation with somebody in the community this week, and they were like, this is my second place. This is a really great community for me that I've just It's such a beautiful home for me. And Colin's like, made me think, this is my first place. This place has become my first place. And I called Ryan and I'm crying and I'm like, oh my gosh. It was so important for me to create a third place my whole life in this career that I did. And Colin is like, no, you've created a home. So anyway, thank you, Colin. You made my week.
Yeah, we'll celebrate that. Honey, you've always been first place in my eyes.
I hope so.
All right. You want the first one online?
Yeah. Hey, Mark, he says, celebrating 506 days clean off fentanyl and meth. And yesterday I paid off my new car. Awesome.
Way to go, Mark. Happy 506. Larry says, hit 80 days sober 2 days ago, Lauren. So I guess Lauren says that. All right,
Awesome.
way to go,
Congrats
Lauren.
on 80.
Happy 80 days.
And Jason says 6 months free from alcohol last Tuesday. Woohoo!
Way to go, Jason. Kayla, I celebrated 10 months of sobriety on Tuesday, and I am happy to say I am 300 days sober today. Way to go,
Awesome,
Kayla.
Kayla.
What a beautiful journey. All right, Tammy, thank you for being up here with me. I'll take this. All right, y'all, a couple of weeks ago, we started this series on, the great Dr. Seuss and his book, Oh, the Places You'll Go. Raise your hand if you haven't read it. Oh, my God, that many of you? You haven't read it? It's going to take you all of 15 minutes to read it. So if you haven't read it, you got to read this profound book. This week, we're in week 3, and it is You're Still Growing.
Life twists and it turns, it zigs and it zags. Some days you'll race forward, some days you'll lag. Recovery's wobbly, it loops and it bends, with ups and downs, but hope never ends. Some days you'll be soaring, so high in the sky. Other days crawling, just getting by. But step after step, oh, the places you'll see when you open your heart and let life simply be. Embrace the adventure, the highs and the lows. For when you choose recovery, oh, the places you'll go.
How great is that? So earlier this week, I was on the YouTube app, and I was looking for a different video, but what happened was one of my old sermons popped up. This thing was from over 10 years ago. Came across the screen. I said to myself, all right, universe, I'm going to bite. So I hit play, and I watched just the first few minutes. And y'all, I have to be honest with you, it was a bit painful. Because the whole time I'm watching it, I'm thinking, man, why did I say that? Why did I say that thing that way? I should have said it a different way. Why did I tell that story? That story made no sense. And by the way, why was I wearing that shirt? Tammy, why'd you let me out of the house wearing that shirt? I should have worn a different shirt. Now, to be fair with myself, it wasn't that the message was bad, but the truth is, today I see the world differently. I see my life differently. I see recovery differently. I had to remind myself in that moment, Ryan, you're not who you were. You've changed. I mean, that was more than 10 years ago. You were given new perspective. You've seen some things. You've been through some things. See, if I were to ask you, do you see the world, politics, religion, family relationships, your life, your recovery, do you see the world the same way you did 10 years ago? Most of you here would say, well, no, of course not. I've changed. I could ask you, do you see the world the same way you did 5 years ago? Most of you would say, well, of course not. I've changed, been through some things. I could say, what about 1 year ago? For some of you, I could even say 3 months ago. Do you see the world the same way you did 3 months ago? And you would stop me and say, Ryan, you got to understand, everything has changed. I've changed. I see the whole thing differently. Yeah, you're not who you were. You've been given new perspective. You've changed. You've seen some things. You've gone through some things. As Dr. Seuss reminds us in his book, Oh, the Places You'll Go, he says, I'm sorry to say so, but sadly it's true that bang-ups and hang-ups can happen to you. Now here's the deal. In the midst of all the bang-ups and hang-ups, there will be moments where you feel completely lost. and it's okay. You're okay. Maybe you're here tonight, you're saying, man, you don't understand, I'm new in recovery and I just feel really lost. Or maybe you're here and you're saying, man, I'm new to this whole idea of community and I lived so long in isolation and now I'm being told to open myself to others, to let others in, and now I'm actually having to be around people and I just feel really lost. But here's the one that comes up most, and especially in this community, it is when it comes to the God stuff, I just feel really lost. And it's okay. You're okay. And I want you to let those moments remind you, when you feel lost, let those moments remind you that you're still growing. In fact, try this. All those moments of lostness, try replacing it. Instead of saying, I feel so lost, try saying, I'm still growing. I mean, do you see how that kind of removes anxiety from the whole thing? Do you see how it adds grace into the journey of growth? And y'all know we need grace in this thing. And here's the three things, the three fears that I see that come up for people when it comes to the God stuff and feeling a bit lost. And actually, maybe you're not lost, but you're just still growing. But it's these fears. And the first one is this. Man, I don't really dig the labels, because the labels seem so limiting. And maybe even you coming to Free, you have all kinds of fears. You have all kinds of raised suspicions about coming into this place, and I would tell you, it's okay. Do you know, one evening last week, the Canada 6, all six in our family, we went up to Park Meadows Mall. And if you're sitting here thinking to yourself, wait a minute, malls still exist? Yes, malls still exist, and sometimes the Canadays go to the mall. No judgment. So here we are at the mall, all six of us, and we're getting ready to leave. And we have two boys, two girls, and Tammy. And the boys, they have to use the bathroom, and we're getting ready to leave. So Tammy says, all right, Ryan, you take the boys to the bathroom. I'll take the girls. We'll go out and get the car, and I'll meet you up front. And I said, perfect. I take the boys to the bathroom. We get done in there. We're walking down that long corridor at Park Meadows, like next to the Cheesecake Factory where the exit is. And as we're walking down this hallway, two young men stopped me, and they said, hey, do you have a second? I look out the door. Tammy isn't there yet. So, yes, I have a moment. And one of them says to me, have you ever heard of Mother God? And I thought, where's this going? And I said, man, I'm a little confused. Are you talking about different metaphors for God, like God as Father and God as Mother? And he gets out his phone. He says, no. Do you have just a few minutes? I'd like to show you this slideshow on my phone. I'm looking back. Tammy's still not there. Where in the heck is Tammy? So, yes, I have a few minutes. He shows me his slideshow. And I was so y'all know sometimes you want to harass people like this and you want to get a rise out of them. That wasn't the night I was having. I was so nice to these guys. And after the slideshow, I said, thank you for sharing that with me. I haven't seen it presented that way. And he says to me, well, we're having a Bible study this Wednesday, and I would love for you to come. Have you ever read the Bible? To which I responded. And man, I was so nice to this guy. I said, well, I have read the Bible. Actually, I'm a pastor, and my life is really full, so thank you for the invitation, but I think I'm going to pass on the Bible study. And I shook his hand, and I start to walk away, and then he drops this line on me. I'm not kidding. He says, so you don't like the truth, huh? And I'm like, dude, how did we get, seriously? And so I turn around and I start talking to him. I said, man, I've got to be honest with you. I have been nice to you. I just gave you 6 minutes of my time, and my boys are running around like they're crazy. And I watched the slideshow, and I said, let me be honest. Not one time have you shown any interest in me. You didn't so much ask my name. I told you I was a pastor. You asked nothing about that, like what I do, where is it? Nothing. And he says this to me. He says, why would I ask you about your thing when I'm trying to get you to come to my church? And I thought, oh, man, yeah, that's right. That's the game we're playing. I forgot about that. Yeah, I can just be a notch on your belt, right? You don't really got to care about me. Just maybe I can come into the doors. And I knew at that point the conversation was over. And so I walk away. We walk out to the car. Thank God Tammy was there by now. And I get in the car, and I couldn't help but wonder, is this what outsiders perceive? Is this what they see? Is this what they think about when they hear about free and they know nothing about it? Do they think that's who we are? You're going to be another notch on the belt. We don't really care. That's not about relationships. You see, maybe you have had negative experiences. Maybe you come in and you have all kinds of raised suspicion around religion and religious people, and so do I. And maybe you've had some negative experiences with religion, and you say, man, I just feel really lost. And I would say to you, no, you are still growing. Do you know, just over the past couple of years, I've been faced with a question in my life that is really uncomfortable. And it just came up. It's not like I tried to ask this question. It came upon me in the last couple of years. I haven't yet spoken about this publicly until the 5 o'clock service, of course. But one thing I know is I cannot stand before you and not share my current struggles. I mean, the truth is, it's easy to share the 10-year-old, 20-year-old struggles, but what about the current ones? And do you know, since I was a little boy, 5 years old, the label Christian was one that I wore since I was a little boy. And I'm faced with this question of, why is it so uninteresting to me today? Why is that label so uninteresting? Do you know, I was hearing Carrie, our associate executive director, just this week, she was talking to someone about their story, and she said to that person, I was overhearing it, she said, do you know the least interesting thing about you is your addiction? In other words, the most interesting thing about you is not your addiction, it's actually your recovery, the story of transformation, where you are now, how life is different. It's not your addiction. And when she said that, and I'm overhearing it, I'm thinking to myself, man, that's exactly how I feel with this label of Christian that I've worn since I was a little boy. That's why is it so uninteresting to me? At my funeral. God, that got dark quick, didn't it? At my funeral. If you want to be really uninteresting, if you want to make me bored up in the heavenlies maybe, if you want to be really uninteresting, you would say this, man, that Ryan, he was a good Christian man. And how boring, what does that tell us? That tells us nothing. How boring is that? That's just a label. You want to be interesting. I hope people would say things like, man, Ryan, he somehow loved the teachings of Jesus, and these teachings actually changed and transformed his life. He saw it in other people. You want to say interesting things? I hope it would be said that, man, he had this weird, freakish love for the stories and these ideas found in the scripture, and he loved to pull meaning out of them. And I hope they would say things like, man, he didn't always get it right. By no means was he perfect, but he strived to follow God in his life. He strived to follow God's calling. Those things are way more interesting to me, and somehow the label of Christian is so uninteresting to me. And I'm telling y'all, even saying that out loud to you, it comes with a bit of lostness, because it's the label I've worn since I was a little boy. And it's all kind of strange anyway, because I've never really been into labels. I mean, think about like Republican and Democrat. Man, that's totally boring. You want to get boring? Start telling me how you're a Republican or a Democrat. Tells me nothing about who you are. Just tells me that you picked a side. No, you want to make things interesting? Tell me about the things you care about. Tell me about the things you'll struggle towards. Tell me about the things that break your heart. That's interesting. Even when we were starting Free back in 2018 in our backyard, do you know, before our first gathering even happened, Tammy and I, we had the whiteboard in our living room, and we had these long, drawn-out conversations about, is this a church or is it not a church? And I kept thinking, man, I don't really care what it is. I care about what we do, and is it possible, can we get rid of some of the hang-ups and bang-ups by getting rid of the labels? And listen, y'all, I know some of you here, you call this your church, which is totally cool. Others of you say, hell no, this is not a church. What are you talking about? This is my recovery community, my spiritual community, whatever you call it. And the truth is, we don't care what you call it. We care about what happens here. But man, with that label of giving up the label of Christian? Do you know that the voices, with that one, the voices start to chirp? No, Ryan, man, you can't say that. You can feel it, but you can't say that out loud, man. You're a pastor. What are people going to think? What does it do to your identity? I mean, who are you? And what I know, y'all, in those moments, I got to get quiet and get that place of stillness that we talked about last week so that I can hear the true voice. And the true voice asks me those hard questions like, Ryan, do you trust God? Ryan, do you trust the process? Do you trust that God's got you? Ryan, do you actually believe that you're still growing? Which leads to that second fear that comes up. Yeah, it pipes up and it says, man, I should be further along by now. I should have things figured out, but instead I just have more questions. And in the midst of all your big questions, you will say things like, man, I feel really lost. No. Say it with me. I'm still growing. And for some of you, you had religious leaders or religious people in your childhood, going all the way back to your childhood, that told you that your big questions, they were bad, that your questions were just a sign of your defiance. And I would tell you, no, man, your questions, they are absolutely necessary for growth. You have to ask those questions. You have to engage them. You can't afford to ignore them. And it leads to the third fear. And that voice pipes up and says, yeah, but what if I start out on a spiritual path, but somehow I get the whole thing wrong? Then what? I mean, is God going to be disappointed? Is there just more shame and more judgment and more condemnation, which all leads me to the Old Testament or Hebrew Bible book of Leviticus? Bet you didn't see that one coming, did you? Man, the truth is, I love the book of Leviticus, and it often gets labeled as the most boring book. Why would we ever read that? And if you're a bit fuzzy, it starts with Genesis, Exodus, then Leviticus. And do you all know that sometimes people will come to me, and they'll be all excited. Ryan, I'm going to start reading the Bible all the way through, from beginning to end. And then they'll check in with me, and the story usually goes like this. I got to Genesis. I read through Genesis, and yeah, that was fine. I mean, you got the creation stories, and then you get a lot of family dysfunction, and I could relate with that. And then I made it to Exodus, and you know, that was kind of cool. You have Moses and the burning bush, and then you have Pharaoh, who's the king in Egypt, and you have the Israelites being held in slavery, then they're rescued, and you got the plagues in there. That's kind of cool. And then I made it to Leviticus. And y'all, that's usually where the reading stops. That's where people give up. And they say things like, oh my word, it's just so boring and ancient and barbaric and backwards, and it's just a long list of rules, and I could never live up to all these rules. I'm out. Do y'all know just 2 years ago, we received a message on our free Facebook page. We have an image of it. I blotted the person's name out. I don't think you'd know this person anyway, but they said to me, they said, I have 2 tattoos. But after I read Leviticus chapter 19, verse 28, I wished I wouldn't have. What do you think the real meaning of this verse is? I get different answers, so I'm totally confused. I'm not judging at all, but I feel like I've committed a bad sin getting my tattoos. To which I responded, my brother, if you have committed a bad sin with 2 tattoos, well then I, my friend, am in a whole heap of trouble. I didn't actually say that. I was very nice to that person. But do you see what happens when we have no context? I mean, when there's no context, it's just a long list of rules. You're always going to be a bad person. And Ryan, come on, man, it's so clear. Aren't you dying to know a little bit about what 19 verse 28 says? Here's what Leviticus 19:28 says. Let's put some context to it. It says, do not cut yourselves for the dead or put tattoo marks on yourselves. See, Ryan, it's very clear. It's very clear. There's a right and a wrong, and you are clearly in the wrong. The Bible says it. Therefore, it's true, and you are in the wrong, and God is against you. But wait a minute. Who's this talking to? Who's it written to? It was written to the Hebrew people, the ones who were just coming out of slavery in Egypt. They're now wandering in the desert on their way to a new land. Why is this important? Because it's like God is saying to them, listen, you do not have to be like the pagan people. The pagans, they have these rituals This is just one of the rituals of cutting yourselves and putting marks on your body. And they would do this to sacrifice to the gods, to try to earn the favor of the gods. And it's like God is saying to them, you people are called to be a different kind of tribe. You're set apart. And don't you know, you don't have to get my favor. I'm already here with you. And don't you know, I don't do shame. See, I love the book of Leviticus. Do you know how the whole thing starts? Absolutely fascinating. The whole thing starts with the God who keeps calling, the God who keeps showing up even when it's really messy. And so for just a couple of minutes, I want to explore with you just the first 5 words of Leviticus. Leviticus chapter 1, verse 1. The whole thing starts in this very fascinating way. Then the Lord called to Moses. You say, come on, Ryan, that can't be it. What's so interesting about that? Oh, very interesting. Because in the Hebrew, keep in mind the Old Testament, Hebrew Bible is written in Hebrew. In the Hebrew, it doesn't read, then the Lord called. It reads, God continued calling. And the Hebrew word for that phrase is this word, vayikra. Say it with me, vayikra. No, say it with a little bit of energy, vayikra. God continued calling. Don't, as my wife tried to do last night, don't change the K to a G. You get a different word. Some of y'all just picked up on that. That's a different word. We're not going to talk about that word tonight. But see, in the Jewish tradition, Vayikra is the word used to describe Leviticus. You do not just study these Leviticus laws and rules. You study Vayikra, the God who continues to call. And wait a minute, Ryan, that's why you love Leviticus? Yeah. Now, if God continued, that word continued, if God continued calling, well, that means we're picking up in like season 2. And so the obvious question is, well, what happened in season 1? Well, in season 1, you got to go back to the book before this, which is Exodus. And do you remember what happens in Exodus? The Israelites are being held in slavery in Egypt under the rule of Pharaoh. Life is miserable for them. We've talked about this here before. They cry out to God. God hears their cries. God sends Moses to deliver them from Egypt out of slavery, and they're making their way towards the promised land. But they don't make it there right away. They wander in the desert for 40 years, making a mess of things. And it's easy to read it and say, see, these people, they were just spiritually lost. No, they weren't lost. They were still growing. And then you get to Leviticus, Vayikra. God keeps calling, and the whole rest of the book of Leviticus is about God working with the people towards a new way of ordering life and community. And you say, yeah, but that's really boring. No. With freedom, because keep in mind, they have a newfound freedom. With freedom comes all sorts of responsibility, doesn't it? The structure is not boring. In fact, for many of you, think about your story of coming out of addiction. Think about your story of coming into recovery. Rules, structure, reordering of your life isn't boring. You actually might look back and say, man, some of that stuff, it saved me. But the whole thing starts with Vayikra. And that's where the story picks up. The God who keeps calling, keeps persuading, keeps pursuing, keeps showing up no matter what. That's the story. And all the messiness, and all the questions, and all the wandering, Vayikra. God keeps appearing. God keeps persuading. And do you think these wandering Israelites, these former slaves, felt a sense of lostness? Yeah. But we can see, and looking back, because we're thousands of years removed, we can see that they weren't lost, they were still growing. They felt lost, and God kept calling. And do you think we, wandering free people, we former slaves to addiction, ever feel a sense of lostness? Yeah. And maybe we're not lost. Maybe we're still growing and we feel lost sometimes, and God keeps showing up, whatever you choose to call God, higher power, ultimate reality, the ground of our being, spirit, universe, whatever you choose to call it. I don't think it cares. It keeps showing up in our lives. And listen, I know for some of you, when it comes to the God stuff, when it comes to the spiritual journey, you don't know exactly where you land. You don't know exactly where you are. You might even feel a bit lost, and it's okay. Allow me to ask you the same questions that the true voice asks me. In all the messiness, do you believe Vayikra, that God keeps calling, that you're being held by something that is greater than you, that you're actually being sustained? Can you trust the process? Can you trust the process enough not to ignore your big questions, but to actually go deeper into them? Can you trust that it's going to be okay? Can you trust that you are going to be okay? And will you give yourself enough grace along the way to confess, I'm still growing? Do you all know that for several years now, I'll close with this. For several years, since our kids were very little, we've had this bowl of rocks and bowl of stones at our house. And we took these rocks. There's Breck, our little boy. This was a few years back. But we took those rocks and we just drew little symbols on them. Like some of the symbols are smiley faces and broken hearts and full hearts and squiggly lines. There's a cross in there. There's a peace sign in there. And some nights still, we'll gather in our living room or we'll gather around the dining room table and we'll invite our kids to pick up a stone that resonates with them, and it's to help them then articulate their feelings, their day, or their God, the spiritual. Because y'all do know the spiritual is sometimes beyond words. Words can't capture it, but sometimes images can help us articulate it. And man, the profound things that come from their mouths, the profound things about God and peace and joy and brokenness and sadness and brokenheartedness. And so during the song, I want to invite you, if you want, you can just sit and reflect. By the way, I love this song. It's called I Found by Amber Run. Yeah. If you want to sit and reflect, you can, or we have about 10 Sharpies up here and we have little rocks. Maybe you want to draw a symbol on a rock. I mean, because sometimes your words just can't capture it. Maybe the symbol can help you articulate where you are on the spiritual journey. Who is God to you? Maybe it's a letter, maybe it's a number, maybe it's a simple image. If you would like to draw that image during this song, I invite you to come draw an image and take this rock with you, and remember, you are still growing. So this time is yours.
Hi, friends. Welcome back. For those of you who are new here tonight, you should know that every single week we invite a community member up onto the living room to share some of their story and kind of a little perspective on the topic at hand. And this week, I never quite know that the guest storyteller is going to line up so perfectly with the topic because I never really know what Ryan's going to say. He gives me like a general overarching, so sometimes I get just as emotional as you guys do in the audience hearing it for the first time. And our guest storyteller, he was actually the one that this week where he's such an amazing soul, and his backstory is long, and some of it's kind of dark, and some of it's kind of painful, and he has such this beautiful lightness about him, even though he's carrying so much. And that's one of the things that I love about our community, is that our addictions are the least interesting things about us. It's how we show up today and how we continue showing up each and every single day. So I'm so honored that you get to have a glimpse of this guy's story, because he is an amazing, amazing asset to this community. So if you would, please help me welcome Simon up to our living room.
Hello again.
Hi, welcome back. Thanks for being here. I was just telling him, I'm like, honestly, I forgot every question I asked him at the 5 p.m., so we'll see where this goes. But I think it also goes into that we are still growing, that we don't have to get this perfectly, that anyone who comes up here can just be themselves, and that's enough today. So thank you for taking this wild ride with me.
Yeah.
I'm glad
Thank
you're
you for
here.
having me up here.
I do want to start because although I think, like I said earlier, that your addiction is probably one of the least interesting things about you, what I love about your story is you've come pretty far from where you started, but specifically on the God stuff. You grew up in on the western slope of Colorado?
Yep.
Is that what it's called? Yep.
Yes.
In a very hippie kind of communal life where your parents, I believe, were Buddhist, and that was kind of your introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about the spirituality and what God looked like to you growing up, and pre-addiction, kind of what your life looked like?
So, yeah, I grew up very communally. Spirituality to me was more of a connection to nature growing up. It's funny, as I grew older, I had moments where I knew God was speaking to me through people, but I've always had that like spiritual connection, mostly like in nature. Growing up very rural, a lot of outdoor time. Yeah, I never really had a connection to like what God is in the traditional sense or in the church sense. Always spirit.
And what I love too, again, this is very common in our community, and although it doesn't have to be a part of everyone's story, relapse was a part of your story. And what I loved so much about when we talked about how this time was different, and you explained to me that you finally understood what it meant, the difference between sobriety and recovery, and how that spirituality entered into your recovery in a way that it hadn't before when you were just in sobriety. Can you give us a little bit of insight of what does that mean to you today, the difference between sobriety and recovery?
Yeah, so in my history, so I've experienced sobriety several times in my life. The first time I've had a 7-year period of sobriety, and I've had a 5-year period of sobriety, both of which I relapsed after because I never understood what it meant to be in recovery. The first time, sobriety is just an absence of a substance. But I only maintained that because I poured my life into work. I stopped using, but I didn't establish any sense of community. I didn't have any connection to other people. I isolated myself and I went to work. And having that single focus, there was no balance in my life. There was nothing that held me there. And when my life took a left, or I had those bang-ups and hang-ups, the little rocks in the road, it was easy for me to just go back to using because it was the only coping skill I had for dealing with any sort of pain in my life. And the same thing the second time. The second time I got sober, I just used work as a way to maintain sobriety. This time when I got clean, I was immediately introduced to the world of peer coaching, where my coach introduced me to community. I got involved I was in a men's transition, Step Denver, who we're all familiar with, great transition program, but their focus is community. I found the Phoenix. I found my RSM at Step Denver, who's one of my other mentors. He was a guest on your couch. It's the first time I was brought here. He invited me to come and hear his story. And when I walked in these doors, I've been here every Saturday since, because I felt a sense of connection the moment I walked in this building. I talk about this. There's a sign that you have in the cafe out here that says, "Home is not a place, it's a feeling." And that's what I got when I walked in here. I got that feeling of connection that made this my home.
And for those to just back up slightly, for those of you or those out there who may not know what a peer coach is, can you explain a little bit perhaps what the difference is between a sponsor and a 12-step program and what a peer coach can do?
Yeah, so peer coaching, as a coach, I support all pathways to recovery. I'm not a sponsor. I don't work 12 steps with people. I support the 12-step programs. There are lots of pathways. Everybody has a different approach. Everybody has different needs. But the big thing about being a peer coach is that life experience. I've in 50 years, I've experienced so many different things, and my addiction and my periods of sobriety, and the different pathways that I've tried and things that I've done in my life make me relatable to people. I'm highly relatable to my clients, and so anything that they have gone through, I'm able to empathize, have compassion for. I understand people in their addictions, and there's, I've made so many mistakes myself. There's nothing that you can tell me that can really surprise me in your journey, or shock me, or make me think that you're any less than anybody else. So being a peer coach, what we become a guide. It's sort of like life coaching. We'll walk right alongside you. Coaches, our jobs are to have resources. Our jobs are to be able to connect you. Sometimes I consider myself a street artist. I'm a very street level. So I work with people on a lot of life skills, but sometimes people need a higher level of care, and I have to be able to recognize that in people, and bring them to the right. Sometimes I'm not it,
And how do you deal with that? Because I think sometimes, and I know Ryan gets it kind of a lot too, where, somebody who's in that field, they're expected to have all the answers. Like Ryan's supposed to have all the answers, all things God, or you're supposed to have all the answers, all things recovery, being a peer coach. How do you deal with it today when you just don't know, and you are still, where you have to admit not only to yourself, but to somebody else that you're still growing, and maybe you don't have all the answers?
There have been so many times in my life, Carrie, that I have thought I had all the answers, and I was so wrong. I love, today, I love that challenge. I love when I don't have the answer, because every time that I have to go find a resource, or just admitting that you don't know something gives me the opportunity to learn something new, right? Like if somebody comes to me with a problem, my answer to them is let's figure that out together. And not only are they learning, but I'm getting the opportunity to learn and grow.
Can you tell us about the 3 C's that tell us a little bit about
Absolutely. So in my recovery, I have the 3 C's that I use: compassion, curiosity, and courage. It's really important in recovery to, the compassion part, like knowing people's heart, and understanding them. Courage is something that I've learned about. I used to think that I was courageous, or that was part of that. If I knew everything, right? But now I understand courage as allowing myself not to know everything. It takes more courage to admit that you're wrong than to fumble through and try and create this face where you know everything.
And sometimes getting it wrong, we talked a little bit about in the peer coaching world, codependency comes up quite a lot. And knowing that fine line, and I know loved ones deal with this all the time too, of that fine line of what is too much to give someone, and how far am I supposed to give, and how much. What do you say today, or what can you share with either the loved ones or anyone working with somebody else when maybe they get it wrong? What kind of advice can you give to them to remember that they're still growing in this too?
Yeah. So you mentioned codependency. I've had to learn so much. As a coach, there is that fine line between client and friend. I've always had so much need. My codependency has demanded that people like me. So that's part of that, always having the answer for people is if I don't have the answer, then you're not going to like me. So learning that it's okay to not know everything, but then also that separation between peer and friend. I've had to learn a lot about boundaries. I've made many mistakes, and I'm blessed enough to work for a company that has taught me a lot. They've allowed me to make mistakes, and they've sat down with me and helped me define those boundaries and work on those and continue to grow as a person. And instead of just saying you've done this wrong, pointing out where the line gets crossed, and then helping me work to redefine those lines and stay on my side.
And isn't that beautiful when we can surround ourselves with people who remind us that we're still growing and it's okay? So I think it's really important to pick those people who are around us, right? Yeah. And I know we don't have too much time left, but can you please tell people first how they can get a hold of you and how they can get to know you?
Yeah, so the company I work for is called Transcendence Recovery. It's our website, www.transcendencerecovery.com. And you can find us there. I have cards out on the table. I've had the cards out by the ping pong table for quite some time. But yeah, and at every event, I'm in the community.
And he usually brings his amazing dog. The dog isn't allowed to come into free, but his dog is absolutely one of the sweetest, best dogs. And then in closing, I really want what piece of advice or to someone out there who, and this happens a lot in our community, maybe somebody had a slip up and they let themselves get a little bit too far away from community, and they were stuck in the darkness, and getting back in the room sometimes, or coming back through the doors of free, is sometimes the hardest thing that people can do, especially when they've already done it before. What piece of advice can you offer to those people to be a little bit more gentle with themselves and to remind them that they are still growing and that this community doesn't do shame? How do you even start that process?
Right. So I go back to the 3 C's. It's courage and curiosity. You know, when you walk in somewhere and you get that feeling, like the feeling that don't be afraid to, you know, like have the courage to go back, explore that feeling, be curious enough to you know, take a different path. Like life is long, and there are lots of roads to take. And just because you come to a certain place in one path doesn't mean that you just a little bit of courage and follow that curiosity, see that other path. When those doors open, walk through them.
Thank you so much. If you guys please give a round of applause to Simon for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Simon. Simon, can I have that mic real quick for Simon? Will you tell him what you drew? I just thought this was so cool. What you drew on the rock and just the one sentence of why.
Yes. So
it's on. It should be on.
Hello? Yep. So at the first service, I picked up a rock and I drew a crescent moon. And if anybody has gone outside, it became a very ominous.
People have been texting me pictures.
Oh my God, the moon is so beautiful. It's a crescent moon out there.
Yeah.
And the reason I drew the crescent moon at the first service was because I'm just beginning to see the light as the light comes onto the moon. That just.
How beautiful is that?
Yes.
No one's going to top that one. Thank you, Simon. Hey, if others of you, last service, people were showing me these cool images they wrote on these rocks and what it meant to them, and it was so moving. If you have a really cool image and a sentence of what it means to you, send it to us as a DM on our free Facebook page or a free Instagram page. We would love to see them and the sentence of what it means to you. Is that? Yeah, that's for you. Yeah. Okay, y'all. Well, the way we close things down here on a Saturday night, very similar to how we begin. We begin with celebrations. It's a little different. We close with what we call heartaches. That maybe you have been carrying heavy burdens this week, burdens you've been trying to carry alone, and you find out you have no business of carrying these burdens alone. You suck at doing it alone. When we could just admit that, we do better. So part of it is you articulating, you actually putting words to the burden. And if you need some prayer, some encouragement, some lifting up, well, that's what this time is for. So again, we take 3 minutes for this. If you're online, drop your burdens, your heartaches in the YouTube comments or the Facebook comments. We'll join with you there. Here in house, just raise up your hand, and Colin will get you a mic on this side, and Austin will get you a mic on this side. This 3 minutes is yours.
Hi, my name is Cody. I would just like to extend a prayer to one of my best mentors in my job and helped form my career. He just got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So please send prayers.
Lifting him up tonight. Thank you for sharing that with us, Cody.
Hi, I'm Leslie, and I found out like a week and a half ago after moving home to Colorado that one of my friends I always worried about for my drinking days passed away. And that's like 4 in the last 3 years. And I would just like to lift up prayers for the people who don't make it in, and I just have that so heavy on my heart today. So thank you.
Thank you for lifting him up, Leslie. Prayers for all those still out.
Hi, this is Cy. So I have a client that's out in our sober living house who was just told this last week. He has a sister in the hospital who's been battling cancer, and they thought they had taken it out. They amputated her leg last year and thought they had taken it out, and it came back really heavy. And she was just given between 3 weeks and 3 months to live. And so my client that's out, and I just want to send some prayers for him and his family, what they're dealing with.
Prayers for him, man, lifting him up and his family and all who love him.
I'm Jerome, and I wanted to ask for a prayer for my friend Steve's family. One of my good lifting buddies passed away to a kidney failure last week. We have his funeral on Monday. So loss and grief is one of my kryptonites, and I'm going to try something new. So prayers, please.
All right, man. Prayers for you and his family.
My name's Elizabeth, and we had 3 people at PLR go to the emergency room today. One from an infection that was related to substance use, and then 2 others with just medical conditions. And so I just want to lift that up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lifting them up, Elizabeth, and if you were a bit fuzzy on what PLR is, it's Palmer Lake Recovery, correct? Palmer Lake Recovery, yeah. Prayers for Palmer Lake. All right.
My name is Aaron, and this Wednesday I lost one of my best friends to liver failure at 33 years old due to alcoholism. So if you could pray for the Casey family, I'd appreciate it.
All right. Lifting up the Casey family.
Well, we have one back there. I'm Colin. Someone important to me has a medical test later this week, so just prayers that things go as well as they can.
Prayers for them, Colin. And we have one more.
Okay, I go by BW instead of my real name because the Lord gave me the name Buffalo Woman, so I cut it short to BW. But I belong to an acting ministry, and earlier this year, we lost one of our main characters. And their family is not coming back to be part of the play because they're still in mourning. So if we could pray for their family or his family, that would be greatly appreciated.
All right, lifting them up. Thank you for sharing that with us. Colin, you want to join me up here, dude? This is the same Colin who said Free was the first place. What a beautiful thing, man. Thank you for sharing that with Tammy.
First home, not a second home.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, first home. Not first place, first home.
And that was my words, Tammy,
Okay.
to you.
She changed it on you.
Well,
All right, dude.
okay.
You want to take the first one?
Sure. Stephen, please pray for those with food insufficiency. Food prices are through the roof, and SNAP benefits run out before the end of the month. Guide them to the resources that they need.
Yeah. I like how it says guide them. Maybe we can be the hands and feet. Thank you for lifting them up, Stephen. Prayers for them. Faith says, my sister-in-law had a huge loss, and I'm afraid of what her rock bottom will be in her addiction. Faith, lifting up your sister-in-law. Prayers for her. Yeah, prayers for all those in that position. Thank you, Colin, for joining me up here, brother. It's good to see you tonight. All right, y'all. Well, hey, if you've been impacted by the mission of breaking the silence of addiction, which is our mission here, creating space for healing, recovery, and spiritual connection. If you've been impacted by that, well, you should know that we here at Free, we rely upon your generous giving. In fact, people ask us all the time, how are you funded? We're funded by you, the people. Without your giving, we don't exist. That's the simplest way I can put it. And I know many of you have made it a spiritual practice in your life. You've made it a sacrificial practice in your life. And I always try to remind you 2 things. 1, thank you. 2, even if you don't give here, give somewhere. Give to those in need. Give to organizations you see doing good work in the world. Give to those you stand behind. And we are grateful if you give here. If you want to give here, there's a few different ways to do it. You can download the app, Free Recovery Community. All of the content is on the app. All of our messages, guest storytellers. There's a giving button. You can give one time, or you can set it up to give monthly or weekly, however you want to do it. We're grateful for all of it. You can do the exact same thing on the website, freerecoverycommunity.com. And there is 2 giving kiosks, one beside these doors and one just outside these doors, the back doors, for you check and cash type people. If you still do that, we do accept that here, and we're grateful for it. It's been good to be with you all this evening. Shall we go out with a prayer? Yeah, I think so. I would invite you to just open up the hands, a simple sign of openness. No magic, just openness. Yeah, maybe tonight you're open to the God who is always calling, always moving, in you, through you, all around you. The God of your breathing. And maybe tonight you're reminded that you are still growing. If you don't know the set aside prayer, Well, it's on your screen. And it goes like this. God, today help me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything I think I know about myself, everything I think I know about others, and everything I think I know about my own recovery, so that I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please help me see the truth. Amen. Grace and peace to you. See you all next time.